What is sovereignty, and specifically what is soul sovereignty? Well, words are as often enigmatic as the understandings that they attempt to deliver. Of course, we like to pretend otherwise. But each word is truly like a prism or a crystal, refracting countless angels and hues of meaning. Each word is both a tool and, in subtle ways, a riddle. They are messengers, really, every word. Messengers of the ideas that we send with them. And yet, they're also very subtle carriers of unspoken nuance. They hint at their layered meanings in ways that we rarely realize. So to use words, or more accurately, to wield words well, it's a poetic art, a balance of focus and abandon, certainty and openness. It's an art of conjuring not so much the facts, but the living spirit behind the words and the relationships within and between all of the words. Of course, to express such artful awareness with words, or in any way, in any form of art, it's very rare. And to listen in such a way is even rarer still. So with all of this in mind, we look towards this word, sovereignty. It's a word that has been found to resist definition, defying the attempts to reduce it to a simple concept. Sovereignty, as we explore here, soul sovereignty, it's not about any kind of control or dominion. It's not about ruling over others. And it doesn't line up with the shiny yet shallow promises of self-help and success language. Sovereignty, or soul sovereignty, is a deep, almost hidden alignment within oneself. In a way, it's like finding and locating yourself in a still center within which all of your thoughts and emotions can find a common ground, or a common root, or a place of integration within the whole. Sovereignty truly is the silent power at the heart, in the heart, of all we dream of becoming. It's the portal through which our soul moves, fully embodied into the world. When we try and define sovereignty, we often reach for other words like ownership, mastery, autonomy. We try to locate or triangulate sovereignty like we're looking at it on a map. Try to surround it with other ideas in order to find where it is located. But all of these, at best, all of these other words, they fall short. And at worst, they very quickly lead us astray into, false sovereignty. So for instance, the word ownership, it suggests possession, as though sovereignty were a thing to be seized or bestowed by another, something that can be carried around. When in truth, sovereignty is the inherent presence and energy within us that must be recognized and reclaimed. It is inherent. Another word, mastery, often gets equated with sovereignty. But mastery implies a hierarchy, and as such, some kind of control. It frames the idea of there being a game within the self that we must climb the ladder of. But it's this very kind of game that sovereignty dissolves. Sovereignty is no master, and it seeks no slaves. Another common word, autonomy. It lacks the richness of connection that we find in sovereignty, the intricate interplay between the self and the whole. This is the maturity that is cultivated from the uncertainty of interdependence. Sovereignty honors this uncertainty and this interplay. Sovereignty thrives in this. Now, we also have beautiful words like stewardship and custodianship. They come closer, perhaps. They hint at the sacred relationship, the sacred responsibility that sovereignty entails. But even these terms don't really touch the true ferocity, the ferocity of sincerity and commitment that sovereignty requires. Really, sovereignty is a paradox. It is sensitive yet fierce, gentle yet resilient. It doesn't dominate, but likewise cannot be dominated. It invites the world in while remaining whole, grounded in the simple wisdom of its own being. To live sovereign is to embody the old meaning of the word itself. This old meaning of the word sovereignty is something along the lines of to live without the rule of another. But what does it mean to live without external rule? What does it mean to reclaim the self or to reclaim one's life in a world that has basically demanded our submission since the day we were born? Well, the unseen rulers of our lives, they don't merely govern us. What do rulers do? They provide measurement. They dictate what is good and bad, worthy and worthless, permissible and forbidden. They measure. Rulers measure. It's easy to remember once you name it as such. Such rulers are not confined to the thrones of, kings and queens and the halls of presidents and so on and so forth. These rulers are embedded in the socializing stories that we inherit, the unreviewed judgments that we internalize, the disoriented expectations we unconsciously accept and project. From birth, we are handed these rulers. We call them cultural norms, societal expectations. These are the subtle scripts defining what it means to be acceptable, to be included, to belong. They shape us long before we have the ability to question their origins. Basically, they are agreements that were made in our absence, and yet we inherit the keeping of these agreements. And we measure ourselves against them constantly, and rarely do we suspect how arbitrary our measurements are. To live sovereign is to dismantle these rulers, not necessarily through rebellion, though the energy of rebellion is needed. Rebellion, though, it tends to entangle us with the measurements just in a different way. We must go through a more mysterious route. Words, of course, cannot capture the true nature of this path, but many have called this route liberation. Well, sovereignty is freedom. It's freedom from the need to measure ourselves in ways and against standards that we do not choose ourselves. It's really the audacity to step outside the narratives that largely amount to one simple belief: we are not worthy. And it takes the form of its twin as well, which is others are not worthy. So doing this is no small task. These rulers, these measurements are wired into us in our language, into our feelings, into our responses. They offer the illusion, though, of safety. They give us a structure to lean on, even as they are confining us. They provide a script to follow, which seemingly gives us purpose, gives us the feeling of purpose, even as they pull us further from our path. To dismantle them is to step into the unknown, to risk the suffering, the undergoing of rediscovering who we are without the rulers we've lived by. There is, of course, a strange comfort in constraint. The rulers we live by confine us, but They weirdly ground us, not very deeply, but it is a common grounding. They tell us who we are, or at least who we're supposed to be within their measurements. They offer a kind of belonging, though it's in a form that's wildly dissociated. They also shield us from the discomfort of stepping outside the known. But this comfort comes as a radical cost to the soul, to the life that we are living. It strips us of our authenticity, our uniqueness, causes us to question it, and it cuts us off from our creative insight and power. All of these, our authenticity, our uniqueness, our personal insights, and expression of personal power, these are our true contributions. These are our true purpose. These are what we are alive for. Sovereignty demands that we confront this addiction to measurement and face the ways we have betrayed our own spirit, our spirit of life, in order to feel safe. It calls us into this unknown, not so much outside, but this unknown within. It's a wilderness without objective rulers or beaten paths, where all we find is the actual. This is the wilderness of soul. Now, to live without the rule of others, without the measurements of others, does not mean isolation or arrogance or some form of rejection. Sovereignty it's not a fortress that we build to keep the world out. It is truly a bridge. It's a meeting place where self and world intertwine. It's rooted in the deepest parts of ourselves, guiding us with the subtle and heartful wisdom, our heartfelt values, rather than the loud demands of the external pressures, the measurements. True sovereignty is not ignoring, nor is it stubborn in its independence. It respects the wisdom of others, the guidance of those who inspire and lead, and the connections that empower without entangling. It's a fierce clarity that honors both individuality and interconnection. You can see why it's a paradox. Sovereignty allows us to hold the tension between the personal and the collective. It teaches us to be fully ourselves while respecting the sacred dance of connection with others. This is no small feat, but it is the essence of living an authentic, powerful, and fulfilling life. So to be sovereign is to tend to oneself as one tends to a sacred flame. This is not the burdensome responsibility imposed by culture, laden with guilt and obligation, but nor is it the self-indulgent retreat of walking away from it all. It's the liberating responsibility of living in alignment with the soul. It's the recognition that our inner work ripples outward, that by tending to our own fire, we illuminate the path for ourselves and for others to do the same. Sovereignty is not a willful attempt at being perfect. It's more of a relaxing into being present. It is stepping into the fullness of who we are, imperfections and all, and embracing the unfolding mystery of our lives. It's a path of remembrance, reclamation, and renewal of what inherently is. This inner throne, the throne of sovereignty, calls us to reclaim it. And so to do this, we must begin again and be prepared to do so in an ongoing fashion, beginning again and again and again. It invites us to rise from our stupor, our confusion, our indoctrination, our wounds, not to deny any of it, but to rise with all of it, inspired and willing, the willing apprentices of the sacred fire within ourselves. It's not an easy path, but it is the path of the profound beauty of the actual. It is to live the old adage, It's not the destination, it's the journey. Now, there's a very old tale, usually called the Tale of the Fisher King, which comes through the Arthurian legends. It's a story that has just such profound depth and resonance to our modern situation. As I said, its threads come through the Arthurian legends, but it definitely comes from somewhere even before those. It comes out of the deep time of mythic imagination. In short, the story is that the king or sovereign is the current person in a lineage of Grail guardians, or those who protect and tend the sacred chalice of the goddess. The Grail is the vessel that brings remedy, the vessel that brings the healing elixir for all. Yet this guardian is sovereign only by title alone, because a deep wound has taken the place inside of the sovereign where the throne should be. This wound is often illustrated or, described as being in the groin or the upper leg. But in the story, it's not merely a physical wound, but an expression of the loss of life, the loss of vitality and life force, a severing from connection with creative capability, creative fertility, a disconnection from the essence that coaxes life to come forth and flourish. Because the guardian of the Grail is wounded in such a way and cannot take the throne of sovereignty, so too the land around them is wounded, all of the land. As the old saying goes, the sovereign and the land are one. The rivers are running dry, the crops are withering, and the people are despairing in every form. The realm, like its ruler, has become barren and poisoned. Now, in such mythic stories in the dreaming traditions, there's no separation between the sovereign and the land, as I said. They are in service to the land. Their vitality, their capacity to embody the throne, it's the lifeblood of the realm itself. When the sovereign falters, the land falters. When the sovereign is lost, the land becomes a wasteland. Now, the Grail still resides in the Grail Castle of the Guardian. It's a sanctum that could be the beacon of the source of healing and hope for all. Yet the Grail and its power remain somehow out of reach. It's present, yet not connecting to the ways it is meant to be in service. And how it connects is through the sovereign. So this lost sovereign cannot access the Grail's restorative power, even for themselves. They've been caught in a tangled web of disorienting circumstances, unanswered questions. They're caught in a trance, a madness of sorts. Power of restoration is at hand, inherently at hand. But the wounded guardian can only sit idly by as the realm falls into deeper despair. And there's this paradox. The very essence of renewal is present, but enigmatically unattainable, veiled in the mysterious arising of the wound of the guardian, the wound of the soul. So as the story then continues, there's a wandering knight that is seeking a solution to all of this. Now, in the mythic lens, a wandering light is an expression of the questing soul. What do we quest for? Reconciliation, right? It's always trying to reconcile something. So this wandering knight, this movement of soul for reconciliation, enters the story. They arrive at the Grail Castle. They witness firsthand the sort of priestesses that tend to the Grail and see the strange and sacred procession of the Grail, and yet they don't recognize it. Brought before the Grail Guardian, who isn't being sovereign at the time, and faced with this moment of truth, they fail to solve the riddle. And the solution to the riddle, as put in the story, is simply to ask the right question, the vital question. it comes through in different forms, different tellings, but it's basically, whom does the Grail serve? Now, this is a riddle of a question. It's simple yet profound. It holds the power to restore both the sovereign and the land, just in the asking of it. It's the missing thread that could stir the realm back into its wholeness. But the knight does not ask it, so it remains unspoken, and so the story ends in the tragedy that it began with. The knight quests onward, looking elsewhere. The land remains barren, the sovereign's absence continues. The story is not only ancient, but deeply alive in us at present. It's a story that we were born into. Each of us comes into this world sovereign, to bear the responsibility of tending to the inner and outer realms of our lives, of our incarnation. And yet we grow up and find ourselves somehow injured or wounded, as if we inherited a wound as old as mythic time itself, and we have. The cause of this wound is as elusive and mysterious as its remedy, but its effects are absolutely clear. We are disconnected from our vitality, from the sacred currents of soul, from the larger web of life that both nourishes us and is nourished by our soul's embodiment. The sovereignty within us, like in the myth, is hidden, lost, wounded, exiled, really. This absence leaves the land of our lives a wasteland. So without the sovereign on the throne, we lose the ability to truly inhabit our lives. We wander through landscapes of confusion, inside and out. We strive for fulfillment, yet we feel this gnawing sense that something essential is missing. And like the wandering knight, we so often fail to ask the crucial question or questions. We fail to make the soulful inquiry. The Grail, the source of renewal and essential sustenance, interconnected sustenance, thriving, we could say. It's not really a physical object, but a living orientation within us. It's this capacity to connect to the deeper currents of soul and to embody the wholeness we seek both internally and relationally. But the Grail, instead of being protected by a guardian in a sacred temple, is held as though it were locked away in a dungeon where none get to know about it. Its power can only be freed when the sovereign within us returns, and that requires a quest into the darkness, into the wilderness. It's a willingness to traverse the wasteland, to reconcile the separation that takes the Grail's place. The wound itself isn't a punishment or a flaw, though it certainly feels that way. The wound is the calling. It invites us to undertake the mythic journey, to leave behind the distractions, the illusions, all of this that keeps us from the throne. This is a journey of sacred reclamation. It requires us to face the questions we have forgotten or the ones we fear, and to step into and straight through the shadow that we avoid, to uncover the light hidden within us and within everything. So as we reclaim our sovereignty, we begin to see the land transform. The wasteland of disconnection begins to give way to a lush terrain of creativity, belonging, and purpose. The rivers begin to flow again. The soils bear their flowers and fruits and seeds of continuation. Life returns to the land. This is the power of the sovereign. Not to dominate, but to restore and sustain. Not to control, but to harmonize. The land and the sovereign are one. This is the story of sovereign return. This is our story.